Hi, and welcome to the Modern History Virtual Taster Day session. Today we're going to look at some sources on Mussolini, which relates to the Italy course that we study in the first year. So my name is Heather, and I'm one of the Modern History tutors here at York College. So I'm going to take you through the activity and give you a quick overview of the course. And if you do have any questions about the lesson or about the course in general, then please do use the email function to get in touch with us at college, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, so let's get started. So just a quick overview. I've been over this briefly in the short introductory video that you may have already seen, but just to reiterate what you will study if you join the Modern History course at York College. We look at Germany and West Germany in year one. So we do a big breadth study from 1918 through to 1989, and we look at that thematically. So we think about 4 key themes, including the structure of the government, the opposition towards the government, the economy and how that affects everyday life, and also the social element of German history and looking at the life of the people and how that sort of changes between different groups, for example, women and ethnic minorities. Alongside that, we do a depth study where we look at the rise and fall of fascist Italy. So we think about the democracy that Italy is ruled under in 1911 and how that faces several challenges moving through and after World War I, and then how Mussolini is eventually able to establish power and become dictator of Italy by 1925 through to 1943, and then what happens at the end of World War II with Mussolini's dictatorship and the restoration of democracy in Italy. Now, in the second year of the course, we start by looking at the coursework, and this is a great opportunity for you to study something that you're really interested in personally. So you get free choice of the topic that you study in your coursework, and with support of myself, we will turn that into a question and you will be able to do some independent research and write your thoughts on that question about why historians disagree about the topic that you are studying. And then in the second year of the course, alongside that, we look at a British history module. So we look at 2 key themes, poverty and public health, and we think about what is driving change in these areas. So what changes are happening with public health? Are they positive changes? Are they negative changes? And what is the reason for those changes and the impact of those changes? And we look at something very similar for the poverty part of the course, and we think about how are the poor treated, how are they categorised, and what changes the treatment of the poor. And is that change always a positive thing, or does it lead to negative treatment for certain groups of paupers? So in terms of what we're going to think about in this session today, I'd like to start by showing you a picture. Now, you might know who this person is, or you might know nothing at all about them and never seen his face before, either of which is completely fine. But what I'd like you to do is think about, do you know anything about this man already? And if you do, just sort of jot down your ideas on a piece of paper. And if you don't know anything about him, which is absolutely fine, then think about what questions would you ask to establish more information about him and find out who he was. So if you could pause this presentation now and complete that brief activity. Okay, so this man is Benito Mussolini, and he was dictator of Italy between 1925 and 1943. And before that, he founded the Fascist Party in Italy in 1919, so just after the end of World War I. And the Fascist Party grew incredibly quickly and became a huge political force within Italy, so that by 1922, Mussolini was able to establish himself as Prime Minister. And when we look at the course, we look at how he does that, how he establishes his power and is able to become Prime Minister. So originally, he's leader of a democracy, but within 3 years, he manages to erode and manipulate the democratic system in order to establish a dictatorship. And he rules that dictatorship until 1943. And again, we look at a lot more about those specifics in the course that we study on Italy. But that's sort of just a little bit of background just to contextualise who Mussolini was. So we've come across this keyword, and you might have heard it already. So Mussolini was a fascist, and he led a fascist dictatorship. So I want you to think what fascism is. And you might have a definition of fascism already, or you might not, which is absolutely fine. But from what you sort of know, maybe from what you've read or from what you've seen in sort of TV programs or the news, for example, think about any keywords or people that you associate with fascism, and then have a go at writing down what you think fascism is. So if you pause the slide now and complete that activity. Okay, so you've got hopefully your own definition of fascism, or maybe some sort of key people that you might associate with being fascist, and have had a chance to think about that. But if we think about what fascism actually is, sort of what we might refer to as more of a dictionary definition, fascism is a right-wing government which is led by a dictator, and that dictator has complete power over the country. And not only that, they use force to suppress opposition and criticism towards them. And fascism also incorporates a lot of nationalistic beliefs. And when we talk about nationalism, you could think about it a bit like being sort of extreme patriotism. So it's sort of where you think your country is better than any other countries, but you are willing to use violence and aggression to suppress other countries and take them over and add them to potentially your empire. So what I'd like us to be able to do in this session is to understand what fascism is and analyse some sources relating to Mussolini's character, because a key part of the A-level course here is based around source analysis. So I've already had a think about what fascism is, and we're going to move on to look at some source analysis. So one of the ways that we analyse sources as historians is through making inferences. So you may be familiar with this word already from what you studied at GCSE, but if you're not, or if you've heard it before, I would just like you to pause this slide and write down what you think inference means. So if you pause the slide now and write down what you think inference means. So inference is much more than a hunch. When we talk about inference, we're talking about you, as a historian, making an intelligent conclusion based on careful examination of a source. And it's where you go beyond recounting what the source say, and you're thinking more deeply about the meaning of the source. So it's sort of reading between the lines, for example. And we make inferences in our everyday life, even if we might not refer to them as inferences, and even if we're not aware that we are making inferences. So for example, if you're standing at the bus stop waiting for a bus and the bus is late, then you will start to make inferences about why the bus might be late. So you will know, or you will use what you sort of know about the environment around you to have sort of a bit of an educated guess about why the bus might be late. So for example, could it be stuck in traffic? Could somebody on the bus be ill and it's had to pull over? Has it got a flat tire? Has it broken down? Has the driver got lost, for example? So you use your knowledge to make inferences about things all the time. And it's the same skill set that we apply when we are making inferences from sources in history. So we're going to work with two sources, and one of these sources is from when Mussolini was a young boy, and one of them is from Mussolini when he was an adult. So the first one we're going to look at is Mussolini's school report from when he was 12 years old. So what I would like you to do is read through this brief source that you can see on the screen here, And I'd like you to write down 2 or 3 short quotes that you think show us something about Mussolini's personality. And make sure those quotes are sort of very brief, so maybe 3, 4, 5 words long. And once you have those quotes written down, what I'd like you to do is make an inference from each of those quotes about what we could infer about Mussolini's personality. So if you could pause the slide now and complete that activity. Okay, so hopefully you've got 2 or 3 quotes and it's got you starting to think about what Mussolini was like as a young child at school. So I've picked out 3 quotes here that just to sort of show you an example of the type of inferences that we could make in A-level history. So the first one I've picked out is that Mussolini was passionate and unruly. So we can infer that he's got a very strong-willed personality. So I'm sort of reading between the lines, making sort of an intelligent conclusion based on the sort of words and their meanings. I've also picked out he placed himself in opposition to every rule of the school. So again, we could infer that he doesn't like conforming to authority. So maybe that suggests he has a bit of a rebellious personality. And also this third one, he cannot tolerate any injury. He wants revenge. So perhaps we can infer from that his personality has a dangerous or maybe a violent streak to it. Now you might have picked out completely different quotes, which is absolutely fine because we will all pick out slightly different things from the sources and we will use our sort of own knowledge to make slightly different inferences, which is the really interesting thing because we'll all pick up on slightly different things with slightly different emphasis. But you can see there just a couple of examples of what I have picked out. So the next source we're going to look at is a source from when Mussolini was an adult and when he had founded the Fascist Party. So what I would like to do is ask you to read through this source here, which is from a police report, and we're going to make an inference on something different. So we're going to think about what can we infer from what Mussolini was like as a leader from this source. So the first thing I'd like you to do is read through the source and again write down 2 or 3 short quotes that you think show us something about what Mussolini was like as a leader. So if you could pause the slide now and select and write down those short quotes. Okay, so now that you have got 2 or 3 short quotes you've selected from the source, and I want you to develop your inferences from them. So I would like you to, again, pause this slide and write down next to those quotes what you can infer about what you think Mussolini was like as a leader from those specific quotes. So please pause the slide and complete that activity now. And again, I've just, now you've had a chance to think about that and make your own inferences, I'll just talk you through a couple that I made, just as sort of an example, so you can see whether you got similar or different inferences. So I picked out that Mussolini was emotional and impulsive. So I think that we can infer from this that maybe he was quite a reactive leader and an instinctual leader. I've also picked out he's less firm in his beliefs and aims. So maybe from this we can infer that he wants to be a leader, but maybe he doesn't know what ideology or ideas his leadership will be based on. And then the final quote I've picked out is slightly longer. So it says he may take a new line and cooperate in undermining institutions and principles that he previously believed in and supported. So again, I think we can infer from this that maybe he's willing to switch his alliances and challenge the existing authority to increase his own position of authority and power as a leader. So if we're looking at those 2 sources, we have been able to develop our inference skills in line with the style and level of inference skills that we will use in A-level history. Now, another key skill when we're thinking about source analysis in A-level history is to support these inferences with our own knowledge about Mussolini. Now, we're not going to do that today because you may not have studied anything about Mussolini before, but when you come to York College and study modern history, we will sort of develop those skills again around including our own knowledge to analyse those sources and support our inferences further. So now you've had a chance to think about Mussolini's character, the last thing I'd like you to do is, if you were just going to pick one word to describe Mussolini's character, what word would you pick and why? So please pause the presentation now and write down your one word. Okay, so that is the end of the Year 11 Taster Day session for Modern History. As I said at the beginning, if you do have any questions about the course or anything specific that we have covered in this lesson today, then please do use the get in touch email function on the website and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care.